Oh my god, Legacy.
Die hele gang is ek om life is wipers, almal gebyt met snipers. En dan sy moet check soos hyper, nice, so vinnig terug vir die sluise. En dappie soek nog 'n leiter, Michael, sien so geweek in 'n diaper. Waar ek het gehoor aan jou syfer, hoe pak hom sy jou nommer jou type. Wait say, almal die honde is gebyt. Almal die honde ken honde wat nog en ek ken nie honde is strikers. Wait say, almal die honde is gebyt. Almal die honde ken honde wat nog en ek ken nie honde is strikers. Wait say,
o my friend Brigitte, from the Gaza Tel Aviv, with a model Bella D.
Pagamis, ons is diep, van die karre tot op feet. As ek snee, as 'n street, want ons waren mono wat so beat.
Baby live, with a ski, niggas shoot here to repeat.
Say the DJ, repeat, le mañana papaya on me.
Coca Louis, Espari, Garian.
Hoi more everybody, welcome back to another live edition here of the Fairweather Rugby Fan. No Pierre this week as Pierre is busy still moving into his new home, apparently in a Hadida free zone, man. That's probably the premium price in my opinion. So yes, as you see the title this week, I'd rather watch Test Rugby. We're going to talk a little bit about these two competitions right here, our overall vibe about all of it. Obviously, let's go ahead and get a start with the look at the weekend's results. And it was pretty ugly for our South African sides in both competitions, as we obviously get a chance to take a look here at the weekend so far. Obviously, the Stormers oversail a pretty much last place team in the Premiership. It was pretty much predicted to be a very lopsided victory, with the Stormers getting the 40-0 victory there in the Western Cape. The big one on the weekend, Toulouse and the Sharks, a rare appearance from Antoine Dupulse outside of Europe. Not really carrying the weight, but having a good game nonetheless. They get the victory there in front of a lackluster crowd in Durban. Bordeaux absolutely annihilating Exeter. You get Munster, who I did predict to beat Saracens with a 17-12 victory. Stade Francois over Northampton. Who cares about any of these games? We're really here to talk about, obviously, a really untested Bulls team absolutely getting just thrashed by Castries by 49-10. And that pretty much does a roundup for that side of things. We will go over to the Champions Cup, the Challenge Cup right now, and see that obviously Gloucester getting the big win despite the controversy around the Russian front row player. Perpignan getting the victory over Cardiff, very much predicted. Edinburgh squeaking by Vannes. You get Bayonne with the victory over the Georgian Black Lions. Ospreys over Newcastle, kind of predicted that one. Montpellier over, absolutely just thumping the Lions. And Cheetahs pulling out a late last-minute victory there at the death against Zebra Parma, one of the lower teams, obviously, in the URC. So, yes, we talk about this. We talk about the lackluster effort by our South African sides playing in these competitions. And I have vocally said this over on other apps. I have said this repeatedly. I just don't personally think that we should be playing in either of these tournaments. Now, you can say, well, we're in the URC. We have to. Well, do we really? Now, you could say, oh, would you feel different if we were winning? Well, we did well last year, and both, obviously, the Sharks winning the Challenge Cup. But that's not my main reason for why. These are supposed to be like all-star tournaments, best of the best. And when, like, I get it with the Europeans, they're real big on it. But there's also a factor that they're not seeing at the moment. And I kind of feel like I need to show everybody this. So I don't know which image is going to pop up here. So let's take a look at Super Rugby, okay? This was not a Challenge Cup, Champions Cup. You're looking at a 15-hour flight from Tambo to Auckland for that, okay? That's why I don't want to go back to Super Rugby, okay? That's why I do not want to go back to Super Rugby. And you look at the Europeans, like the worst travel that they have to deal with This is their worst travel. This is Dublin to Treviso, Benetton Treviso. It's a 2 hour and 21-minute flight, and it's only an hour time difference. So if we were doing that, we could put together all-star teams. We wouldn't have to have traveling sides to a hemisphere to go up north of the equator or vice versa. I don't mind competing in the URC because that's a club tournament. It's these Champions Cups, these Challenge Cups that we're either not able to send our best sides north of the equator or they're not able to send their best sides south of the equator. I get why Toulouse did what they did yesterday. They wanted to make a statement. It's been a lot of back and forth about how the French really are only good when they play in Europe. And I don't think this is going to change anything. I don't think Antoine Dupos is going to go to New Zealand next summer. I still think he stays at home. I think Ramos goes. I think Intimac may, but I doubt it highly. So this is my biggest argument for not wanting to compete in these tournaments is that it's hard to send your best side when it's a 12.5 hour flight. Because that's what it is. I want to give me some pull up the image here if I can figure out which one was the right one. I believe it was the middle one, maybe. Yeah, like Dublin to Tambo is 11.5 hours. It's a 2 hour time difference, but it's an 11.5 hour flight. You're not sending your best side to South Africa, and South Africa's not going to be sending their best side to Europe. Not when the very next week the URC kicks back in. We're at a disadvantage as it is, being South African playing in European based tournaments. We're already at a disadvantage because of the distance. We're making that disadvantage even greater by playing in these tertiary tournaments that the Europeans have always played in. Now, it doesn't take away from the greatness of what the Champions Cup or the Challenge Cup is, but for me, being a South African rugby supporter, it's really, really, really hard to not be able to sit here and say, oh, hey, we're not sending our best. The proof is in the results. Now, that Sharks Toulouse game, we had a lot of guys injured for the Sharks. I'm not going to take away that Toulouse outplayed the Sharks. They did. They outplayed them. Did Antoine Dupont conquer South? Fuck no. Antoine Dupont didn't conquer shit. As a matter of fact, he got folded probably a few times more than he wanted to talk about. But I hand them the victory. They did win. Does this mean South Africa rugby is done? No. No, it doesn't. At all. So I really just I can't reiterate that enough that I just don't see the reason for us to continue playing in these tournaments. Now, if that's part of the deal, if we have to do it to stay in the URC, then I guess we'll continue to do it. But I don't think we should. I just don't think we should because it's not fair to our teams and it's not fair to their teams. The URC is different. It's a club competition. It's a regional club competition. It's not an international club competition. So with that being said, that's what I'm going to say about that. Do I think South African side should be playing in the Champions Cup or the Challenge Cup? Absolutely not. The end. So we're going to move on to some more rugby news. I had brought it up earlier, and it was the whole issue with the Russian player being forced. I will share the article here and give my opinions on this. No, I do not want to take your survey, PPC. So obviously, the Russian prop Kirill Gatovtsev had the Russian flag on the back of his jersey. He was informed that he was no longer going to be able to be allowed to wear that on his jersey. And this is one of those few situations where along with a lot of people who I would consider right side of the aisle. I don't consider myself right side of the aisle. I'm more of left side of the aisle, where I would say I disagree with my side of the aisle on that. Okay. I don't care. I don't think simply having a Russian flag for your nationality means that you support Vladimir Putin. Just like I think if you have a Russian or a German flag on it doesn't mean you support Nazi Germany, or having a South African flag means you support apartheid. Leave it to the English. Leave it to the English, who have done more bad shit than a lot of countries in the world combined, to say that guy can't wear a Russian flag on his jersey. That is absolute bullshit. And I don't, I stand in solidarity with that man. I do not support Russia by any means. I'm not a Vladimir Putin fan. I'm not a fan of the country. But if that young man wants to wear, if everybody else gets to wear their flag on their jersey, why can't he? Oh, because they're at war. Get the hell out of here. There's a lot of countries at war that you don't say shit about, but you want to say shit about him. I think that's absolute bullshit, and I think it's a pretty dare I say fucked move by the Premiership and by English rugby to not allow that man to have the flag of his birth, the nation of his birth, the nation that he represents internationally on his jersey, just simply because they're that's a bad country. Get the fuck out of here. There's no good countries. Let me let you know this. For somebody who's been around the world, there's very few countries that don't have some blood on their hands. And England is one that has a lot on theirs. So, with that being said, do I agree with what they've? No, fuck no, man. Let that guy wear a Russian flag on his jersey. I don't give a shit. That is stupid to me. That is dumb to me. And yeah, I just think it's absolute bullshit. So moving on to the rest of this week's news. Obviously, we're still a good less than 7 months away for the Springboks return, as they will be taking on Italy and Georgia. I cannot wait till we get back to that shit, because I am absolutely. So we're kind of continuing on with our why I would rather watch tests. So I just recently found out something. So okay, so obviously we have the URC, these are our top sides. We have our Curry Cup, which is our top domestic competition. And I got really curious, do these other countries that we compete against in the URC have their own domestic competitions? And if so, why don't they talk about them? So for any of you guys that are not familiar, apparently Ireland has one called the, I will share this page. Have any of you guys ever heard of this? Let me see if I can expand this out a little bit here. The Energia AIL. This is the All Ireland League. And I've noticed how we never really talk about this at all. They never really talk about it. And if you're at all curious as to what that type of rugby looks like, just get on YouTube. The games are absolutely free, at least here in the US, to watch. And I'm just going to come out and say it. Our Curry Cup teams would beat the absolute brakes off of every one of those AIL teams. Now, you could say those are amateur teams, and I would agree with you. They are very much amateur teams. But maybe that's the difference. Maybe because we have a much stronger domestic club rugby system, that we don't put as much emphasis on our top sides. Like, we do obviously want the Stormers, Sharks, Lions, Bulls to win, but I think we also have the Curry Cup that we look at as like a really good barometer and a good gauging for where our rugby is domestically. I think that's also kind of a difference too, is that we develop our players from within, and the European clubs will go and get guys from other countries to pad their domestic players to make their teams much better, obviously. But maybe that's also why when it comes to every 4 years when it's international test time, it just seems to be Southern Hemisphere teams at the top of the podium because they don't do that. They don't go and pad their club teams with foreign professionals. The darlings of Irish rugby right now are a Kiwi and a South African. And before the South African was there, it was a Kiwi and a Kiwi. And before that Kiwi was there, it was a Kiwi and a Kiwi. And before those guys were there, it was an Irishman and a Kiwi. We don't pad our domestic professional teams with overseas talent. We develop the talent we have within. Then they get to a point where they want to go overseas. They want to go to a Japan. They want to go play in the Premiership. They want to go play in the Pro 14. They want to go do all that, and we let them go do that. They go earn a paycheck. But when it comes to domestic rugby, either the Currie Cup or our URC sides, they're overwhelmingly South African. I know there's an Englishman that plays for the Stormers. I know that you have the Shituka brothers playing for the Sharks, who were both born in, I believe, Democratic Republic of Congo, but they were educated in South Africa. Might have an occasional Namibian, Zimbabwean, that kind of thing. But we don't have like Kiwis, Argentines, and Aussies to pad our top level teams. Our top level teams are made up of domestic talent only. Now, the regional shit is getting a bit fucked up, obviously, with the Sharks just being the most highest payroll team in SA rugby at the moment. But we don't do that. We don't go and get a star from another country to make our domestic team that much better. Now, am I taking a crap on the European club teams that do that? Yeah, kind of. But at the same time, it's like, I get it. You do what you got to do to remain competitive. When club rugby is the biggest thing for you, as it seems to be for Ireland and a lot of the Six Nations countries, I get it. You want to win at a club level rugby, and then you want to win the Six Nations. And I get that. We want to win at a club level, and we want to win a rugby championship, and we want to win a World Cup. Now, we seem to be able to do the World Cup, the rugby championship occasionally, but the club rugby side of it, we remain largely untrophied in it from playing years in Super Rugby, which I still think you could take the best European club and put them in Super Rugby, and they would get smashed based on travel times alone. They wouldn't be able to keep up with it. But at the same sense, you could probably take the best Super Rugby team and put them in a European rugby competition, and they'd probably get smashed just because they don't have the amount of imported talent on their clubs that the Europeans seem to have. Once again, you're big on club rugby because you want to win at that. We're not big on club rugby because it's like it really means nothing to us. And also playing in a club rugby competition like Super Rugby for so long, where it really was the Kiwis dominating. You were if it wasn't the Crusaders, it was the Chiefs, it was the Landers, the Hurricanes, occasionally an Aussie side. We had a good run there in the 2007, 2010 with the Bulls. But really, at the end of the day, Super Rugby was designed for the Kiwis to succeed. I mean, they did, and they flourished, and they did well, and they still do to this day. But at the same respects, it's like we didn't take club rugby that seriously. Like the Sharks were never that good at Super Rugby either. Let's just face facts. It was either the Lions under the Ackerman era with Elton Yankees and Faf de Klerk when they had, Malcolm Marks, all those guys there, or it was the Bulls under, Henneke Meyer with him winning, with the combo of Bakis and Eben, or it was, like I said, it was predominantly the Kiwi teams. So even at Super Rugby level, as much as I enjoyed it, were we successful at it? Not really. Not really. I think we've had more success in the URC than we ever did in Super Rugby because we've made finals, we've made deep runs every year. We didn't seem to have that kind of success in Super Rugby as it felt. Like there were, like I said, a few good years, obviously with the Lions making a couple of deep runs, the Bulls winning a few times, but we were never super competitive in Super Rugby. I think we're a lot more competitive in the URC, and I do enjoy that. And I don't want to leave the URC. I just still, the fact remains, I don't want to play, and I don't think we should be playing in the Champions or Challenge Cup. It just doesn't make sense financially. It doesn't make sense for the parameters of the tournament, i.e., now would I take out the Cheetahs out of the Challenge Cup? No, I wouldn't, because they're not in the URC and they need all the exposure they can get. And it's looking further and further more like they will not be joining Super Rugby, which really is a shame because I think the fan base there in Bloemfontein, the Toyota Cheetahs fan base, is some of the best fans I've seen, especially on social media. If you are a fan of good rugby, you'll love the Toyota Cheetahs. I love the program they had there. Obviously, Franz is up at the helm now of it. Franz Stan, one of the greatest Springboks ever, in my opinion. What a boot. He's missed. That smile, that beard. I miss the guy. But just like me, just like he got old, just like I did. And yeah, it was time to move on for Franz Stain. So yeah, that's really all I had to say this week. A very short podcast, as Pierre will be back next week. I'm sure we'll have something to rant about next week once again. But you guys, thank you for continuing to support this channel. We do have the TikTok ban is about to go into effect, apparently, here in the US. I might use that as an excuse to get back a lot more active here on YouTube. For those of you that aren't big on TikTok, and probably are like, yeah, it's a kid's app and whatever, I will say this. This is the benefit that TikTok has had. I have grown a fan base on there very, very fast. I've made a lot of friends on that app. I've done interviews with a lot of the friends on that app. It was an app created that was friendly for content creators. YouTube was that at one point, not so much anymore. But I never got into this to make money. I never got into this because I wanted to get rich from it. Now, if somebody wants to pay me to do this for a living, you're damn right I would do it in a heartbeat. Because you got to love what you do. This is a hobby for me, and I love the hell out of it. So hopefully this means I might try getting a little more active here on YouTube. Obviously, with a new interface with Restream, getting rid of, I already forgot what the StreamYard, who doubled their price overnight. That's why I got off of that. These guys are, I'm paying for this what I paid for StreamYard. I'm still trying to get this interface figured out. And for those of you guys that remember when I was just a guy making cell phone videos in my car, look how far I've come. I've gotten older and fatter, but it's been a great ride, and I would love to continue doing this here on YouTube. Still making content over for Casual Bias. He's been on holiday, as you South Africans are enjoying the summer. While we just thawed out here in North Texas, we got right at about 20 centimeters of snow, 18 to 20 centimeters of snow. Temperatures dipped down to -5, -7, and it was a cold week. I actually missed work on Thursday and Friday. We'll go back tomorrow morning. I've got to go clean my car because, if you've ever been where there's snow, your car is filthy after it snows. So I will be going and doing that later today, going and running to the car wash to get my car cleaned up because it looks nasty right now. So, but yeah, once again, thank you guys for the continued support of this channel. I will be back making content more and more, hopefully going forward in the future. And I hope everyone is safe wherever you're at in the world. Cheers, guys.